I was contemplating ever making this type of video, but you know what? I have to defend my boy Yuga Odo and the truly unfair perception of this amazing Yu-Gi-Oh protagonist. You see, Yuga is labeled as a bad protagonist or even weak simply because the guy can actually lose duels, and when it comes to the Yu-Gi-Oh fandom, we're pretty spoiled by exposure to overpowered protagonists, and many think that a character that deviates from this model is terrible. People say, look at this protagonist, he actually loses, lol. This is why Rush Era Yu-Gi-Oh sucks, yet people don't seem to understand Yuga loses because he is an actual more relatable protagonist who doesn't carry the series on his back. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a protagonist that can lose, and heck, it is actually a good thing for a series, and many shouldn't judge Yuga too harshly. Seriously, I'm sure most of your records in Duel Links and Master Duel are not spotless if you've been playing for a decent amount of time. If anything, most people can relate to Yuga more than, let's say, Yugi or Playmaker. Yuga is not the epitome of perfection and feels like a real character you can not only just get behind, but root for more because we can suspend our disbelief that this protagonist can actually lose. You see, characters with faults and who confront failures make us invest in these characters even more. It is why an underdog story like Rocky is beloved and why people prefer the hard-working Luke Skywalker who had to go through trials and overcome failure to rise and become a hero over Rey Palpatine, who doesn't feel as if she needs to or had to work nearly as hard to become as strong as she is, and is strong enough to always overcome her obstacles without much hardships. Many Yu-Gi-Oh protagonists are these unrealistic personifications of the perfect hero, while Yuga feels like the more down-to-earth duelist, and believe it or not, that is a norm in card game anime, which is why I specified that the Yu-Gi-Oh fandom is spoiled by these overpowered main characters. In Cardfight Vanguard, Aichi lost a lot, but the fanbase doesn't consider him weak because losing is a way for him to not only grow to be a better fighter, but it also makes the world he is in and part of feel more competitive. Instead of people saying Aichi is weak, people understood that his opponents are really talented fighters. Aichi losing brings credibility to the characters he associates with, and this is similar to Yuga. The world of sevens is full of incredible players who can actually beat Yuga, who is not weak by any stretch of the imagination. Losing to Luke and Romy shows us that his companions are strong, and losing to seasonal enemies like Asana, Nail, and Yuo show how threatening they are as adversaries. While in Reigns, nobody looked like they were on Playmaker's level, friend or foe. You knew if he dueled he would win, and the only other duelist you can count on to a degree is Revolver or Soulburner if they were dueling an enemy, while in contrast, you would lack confidence in Aoi, Go, or Emma, or any other characters would actually be able to win against any enemies in that series. Heck, even the enemies look weak in Reigns. Revolver, the guy he beat, was the final boss of Season 1, Bowman was the final boss of Season 2, and prior to his last duel with Playmaker, he lost twice and had one draw with Playmaker. Not exactly a way to promote the end of season villain as a threat. While in contrast, Nail felt like an actual threat to Yuga. He unleashed a new type of monster never before seen, a maximum monster, and was able to defeat Yuga soundly. This loss brought down Yuga's spirit, and he needed to be put in his place by Roa. Also, Luke, Roman, and Gakuto dueled against Otis to find a way to help Yuga. This loss to Nail was beneficial for the plot and characters. The end of arc villain and maximum monster was shown to be an actual threat. The loss pushed Yuga to have an internal struggle he must overcome, and this loss allowed the cast to shine as they found their answer to support Yuga. This one loss put in motion so many moving parts for multiple characters. The arc ends with Yuga and his newfound resolve facing off against Nail one last time and was able to use a maximum monster of his own thanks to his companions. Yuga was able to defeat Nail on an epic duel with the fate of Rush duels on the line. The once fallen hero was able to overcome a foe that pushed him to become a stronger duelist, and this win felt so much more rewarding than if he just beat Nail in their first ever duel. Interesting thing to note is that this concept of the protagonist losing to elevate the plot and characters is not new to card game anime in the least. Look at Shobu and Duel Masters, who would lose a lot, especially before his big showdown against Hakuo. In the lead up to his climactic battle of the season, Shobu would need to grow as a character and duelist and upgrade his deck to incorporate evolution creatures, and he even used cards from other civilizations other than just fire. He became better and was able to defeat Hakuo, a duelist who was once out of his league. In Cardfight Vanguard, Yu took losses to Toya and Mirei, but one of his biggest losses led to his rivalry with Raika, a pro fighter with a different ideology. Raika showed he was on a different level, and Yu changed up his deck from the overdress strategy to the cross cross overdress strategy, which carried him to the finals against Raika in an incredible fight where he survived all of Yuvberg Revo Dress's forms and was able to defeat Raika not just with his new cross overdress cards, but the key to winning was Varina Arcs, an overdress card. And overdress cards were the cards he used before, which he lost to Raika. Yu showed Raika his new strength born from his new deck, and even utilizing his old strategies that was criticized by Raika to actually defeat him and win the tournament. Heck, look at Shadow vs Flame. Light wanted to beat and understand Haruma, who was crushing all players, destroying the fun of Shadowverse. Light thought he could win, but was defeated by the statistic player who effortlessly beat him, but through his loss, Light began to understand how Shadowcraft decks work, so he can strategize on how to beat Haruma. He even found out that he was not fully utilizing his ace correctly, and in the climactic match of the tournament, Light was able to utilize everything he learned to defeat Haruma, and you can't help but to feel proud of Light, to come as far as he has, an emotion that would have been absent from the viewer if Light was an overpowered protagonist who defeated Haruma right from the get-go. So while it might be a foreign concept for Yu-Gi-Oh fans, other card game series understand how losing can actually be an important aspect of a competition-based series to make the protagonist improve and show that the adversaries are to be taken seriously. When you see Sevens in Go Rush, the writers understand the importance of a relatable protagonist with faults who work hard to become better as opposed to untouchable heroes who just win every time. Not saying Yu-Gi-Oh writers have never understood the importance of a character losing. We've seen this concept utilized greatly but very rarely. When it comes to Yuga, there's something else to consider about him that is very important, and that is that Yuga doesn't rely on magic or any Deus Ex Machina when he duels. It's all about his deck and what he puts into it. No Crimson Dragon to give him the perfect card he needed through its intervention like with Yusei. No Shining Draw to magically put a card on top of his deck like with Yuma. No Storm Axis that so happens to give Playmaker the perfect Cyberse monster he needs for his current situation, despite that the card is supposed to be random. Not to mention Data Storm so happened to pop up right when the requirements to use his duelist skill is met. People hate on Yuga because he loses by not cheating to win. It's hilarious that people will call Yuga weak and Yusei strong when there are instances where Yusei would have lost without supernatural forces being on his side. Yuga is unlike most of the protagonists who rely on plot relevant intervention to overcome enemies who would have bested them otherwise. Yuga wins with his own strength, strategy, and deck construction methods, and not due to some external force. Calling Yuga weak compared to other protagonists because he doesn't cheat to snatch victory from certain defeat like other characters feels wrong. It feels like people look down on Yuga because he doesn't cheat, yet glorify protagonists with better win records because it's padded by plot armor. Now I'm going to take this time to address something people are probably thinking or heck even typing up as I reply before they even finish watching this video, and that is that protagonists who are not Yuga can't lose because they have matches with higher stakes. Well, first let me address that Sevens does have stakes, with most arcs having the destruction of Rush Duel as a consequence for failure, so there are stakes for Yuga and the gang to win. Just because the world is not at stake doesn't mean there aren't stakes that have a degree of importance for the series. For example, if Nail or Otis defeated Yuga, the series would have had a bad ending. But I want to go deeper into this whole can't have the other protagonists lose because of the high stakes of their series argument. You see, these are works of fiction. The creators can make the protagonists lose and make workarounds for those losses. Initially, you would think Yugi losing all his star chips in Duelist Kingdom would be something that can't happen because he won't be able to move on to the next stage of the tournament to save his grandpa. But he did lose, and things played out to get him back where he needs to be in the plot so he can eventually win in Duelist Kingdom and challenge Pegasus. How about the Waken the Dragons arc? Knowing that losing a duel with the Seal of Orichalcos activated would take the loser, so you would think, well, Yugi can't lose under those conditions because it would be game over. But he did, and through creativity, the writer spared Yami and was able to keep the plot going. Not only that, these losses were big for Yami and Yugi and made them develop more as characters. Yami felt responsible for giving into the temptation of the Seal of Orichalcos to beat Raphael, and in doing so made him lose his partner and made him even question if what Raphael said about him possibly being a tyrant ruler is true, and he has to confront himself and push forward to save Yugi's soul and end Darce's ambitions. Yusei took a loss to Kiryu. Most would think that a signer losing to a dark signer would be a bad ending situation, but Yusei was able to recover from the loss. This defeat elevated the tension of the Dark Signers arc. It showed both the characters and us the viewers why the Earthbound Immortals wielded by the Dark Signers are threats to be taken seriously by not just showing their abilities but also showing that one of these godlike monsters can be an incredibly strong character like Yusei. Saying characters like Yusei, Yugi, and Playmaker can't lose duels because the stakes are too high is just a lack of imagination of how you can construct the plot to incorporate losses for a protagonist to show growth and portray enemies as actual threats stress, even in a story with heavy stakes. Many would argue that Playmaker had to be undefeated because losing meant he would have to give up Eye. And to that I say, why can't he lose Eye? Why can't Revolver beat Playmaker and take Eye and use the destruction of Eye as a catalyst to activate the Tower of Hanoi in Season 1, which will prompt Playmaker to go on a rescue Eye mission along with Go and Blue Angel? This is not rocket science, this is fiction, and writers can build these moments and stakes. Making a rival character like Revolver lose so early in series just hurts his credibility and his threat level, and people who are not using their imagination would say Playmaker had to win in order to save Blue Angel. But why does she have to be a damsel in distress and have her life on the line in the first place? Revolver is the leader of the organization Playmaker wants to take down. You don't need to put Revolver in a must-lose situation to get them to duel. In wrestling, this would be called bad booking. So don't say Playmaker had to beat the leader of Hanoi, because more competent writers would not have wrote themselves into a box like this, considering you can get to the same duel by different methods, and they could have even pulled a Revolver was meant to win but had to cancel the duel moment similar to Kaito versus Yuma round 1 in Zeal, which would have kept Revolver strong and not make Playmaker look overpowered. Heck, they could even kept the same story beats and make Blue Angel infected with the virus, but despite Playmaker not winning the duel, she is able to regain consciousness, but now her avatar is corrupted, and at times she would go berserk, and she needs the cure from the Knights of Hanoi to recover, giving her reason to join Playmaker. And that is just one idea. I'm sure all of you could come up with good ideas yourselves. Now yes, not every duel can be lost. That is why there is a point of return and no return. You can have a protagonist lose in a point of return, like Yugi can't lose to Pegasus in the final match of Duelist Kingdom arc, but he was able to lose to Kaiba earlier because losing at that point is not a point of no return. It is also important for a series to have a sense of downtime as well, for characters to not always be in the thick of the plot and can get meaningful wins and losses, like how Judai lost to Kaiba Man, or Zane in his first match against him, but when facing Kagemaru he needed to win, or Yuma, who normally has Astra on the line, was able to take a loss from Shark and Kaito without losing Astro, but he had to beat Tron. Yuga has a share of downtime duels where he can lose and give characters he is associated with the time to shine, and he can lose in points of return to justify the strength of a villain. To say Sevens doesn't have stakes is false, and to say Protagonist must win in a series because the stakes are high is not entirely true, and with imagination and proper storytelling, you can show protagonists fail and recover from their loss and become a better person from it. Considering that Rush era Yu-Gi-Oh does target a younger demographic, protagonists like Yuga or even Udius teaches a valuable lesson that not everyone can be perfect and will fail at times, and it is important to press forward and not give up. Like the viewers, Yuga is not the epitome of perfection and has faults, and how he overcomes those faults is what makes him a hero they can look up to, unlike a character like Playmaker, who is essentially an overpowered main character. And trust me, as much as I hate Vrains, I like Playmaker, but I can never invest in him as much as Yuga, who can and has been shown that he can encounter faults. So I watch Yuga wondering if he's going to win and overcome his situations with actual curiosity, unlike with Playmaker, when the question is never is he going to win, but the question is how is he going to win? So next time before you call Yuga weak, take into consideration that he is not an overpowered hero. He is in a setting with duelists who have equal or at times greater skill level than him, and he doesn't have the comfort of some external force bailing him out of a losing situation like other protagonists. So he might lose here and there, but his victories are his and his alone to claim, and there is just something novel about watching a character grow and become better and stronger and show us we can do the same, teaching a lesson that when we are at low points we can get back up and overcome or even compensate for our weaknesses and become better people because of it. I personally like all the Yu-Gi-Oh protagonists. Heck, Yuga's not even my favorite, but I still feel it is wrong for people to rag on Yuga, who is a very well written protagonist that people can see themselves as more than, let's say, the other protagonists who are incredibly powerful personifications of the perfect hero, unlike Yuga, who is like the everyday duelist who loves duel monsters and who is entangled in things bigger than himself and is able to overcome them. I really just wanted to make this video because I do think it's unfair that people classify Yuga as weak or a terrible protagonist when, unlike other protagonists, he does win with his own strength, no magic, no deus ex machinas, and he is written as a more relatable character that you can actually get behind, and not just watching some overpowered character just plow their way through the plot. That's all I got for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. I would love to see you guys in the comment section. Please subscribe, it really does help out the channel. Peace out.